The call came during my third deployment to Afghanistan. Bad news always seems to find you no matter how far from home you are. Captain Lawson, the voice of my commanding officer echoed in the small communications room. There's a Red Cross message for you. My stomach dropped. In the military, Red Cross messages usually mean one thing: family emergency. Mom had been battling cancer for nearly 2 years, but her last email just a week ago had been upbeat, talking about her garden plans for spring and how the new treatment was showing promise. I'd allowed myself to hope. 48 hours and 3 flights later, I was standing in the rain at Oakwood Cemetery, watching as they lowered my mother's casket into the ground. My brother Eric stood across from me, his wife Melissa beside him, their 2 children solemnly holding black umbrellas. She went peacefully, the hospice nurse had told me when I finally got cell service during my layover in Germany. In her sleep. No pain. It was the only comfort I had. Eric and I hadn't been close for years. When I enlisted at 18, he'd viewed it as a betrayal of our family's business tradition. He followed our father into real estate development, taking over completely when Dad died 5 years ago. Mom had been proud of both of us, her soldier and her businessman, she called us. But Eric had always seemed to think I'd taken the easy way out, if he only knew. There's a small gathering at the house, Eric said stiffly as people began to disperse after the service. You remember the way, I assume. The sarcastic edge in his voice wasn't lost on me. I'd been home only twice in the past 3 years, once for Christmas and once when Mom had started her second round of chemo. I remember, I said simply. The house, the sprawling Victorian where we'd grown up, was exactly as I remembered. The porch swing Mom had insisted on keeping even when Eric wanted to replace it with something more modern. The carefully tended flower beds that had been her pride and joy. The faded blue door that Dad had been meaning to repaint for 20 years but never got around to. Inside, distant relatives and Mom's friends milled about, speaking in hushed tones, picking at catered sandwiches. I accepted condolences in a daze, my jet lag and grief creating a surreal fog around everything. Rain. I turned to find Helen Myers, Mom's best friend since college, standing beside me. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hand warm as she squeezed my arm. She was so proud of you, Helen said. Showed everyone your picture whenever they visited. Her brave boy, she called you. I swallowed hard. I should have been here. Helen shook her head firmly. No, she understood your commitment. She wouldn't have wanted you to cut your deployment short, even at the end. I hesitated. Has there been any discussion about the will yet? I haven't had a chance to talk to Eric about arrangements. A strange expression crossed Helen's face. You should speak with Eric, she said carefully. Soon. That conversation came the following morning. I'd spent the night in my old bedroom, which was now decorated as a guest room with no trace of my adolescence remaining. Eric had asked me to meet him in Dad's old study, now his study, I supposed. Coffee, he offered as I entered. He was seated behind the massive oak desk, a manila folder in front of him. Thanks. I took the cup he pushed across the desk, then sat in one of the leather chairs facing him. Eric looked so much like our father it was almost uncanny. The same strong jaw, the same calculating eyes. But where Dad's gaze had always held warmth beneath the shrewdness, Eric's was simply cold. We need to discuss next steps, he said briskly. I know you'll need to get back to your duties soon, so I'll handle most of the estate matters. The hesitation before duties made my jaw tighten, but I nodded. I have 2 weeks of emergency leave. I want to help with whatever needs doing. That won't be necessary, Eric replied, opening the folder. Mom's affairs were fairly straightforward. The will has already been through probate. She set everything up months ago, knowing what was coming. I hadn't known that, but then there was apparently a lot I hadn't known. She left you her jewelry collection to give to your future wife, should you ever settle down, he continued, not meeting my eyes, and a sum of $50,000. The rest, the house, the family investments, her personal effects, she left to me. I blinked, trying to process this information. The house, she left you the entire house? Eric finally looked up, his expression carefully neutral. Yes. Given that I live here in town, have a family, and have maintained the property while you've been away, it makes the most practical sense. The way he said away, as if I'd been on some extended vacation rather than serving my country, made something harden inside me. "I'd like to see the will," I said. Eric slid a document across the desk. Of course. I read through it carefully. It was straightforward, as he'd said. The distribution was exactly as he'd described. But something felt off. "This doesn't sound like Mom," I said finally. "She always talked about the house staying in the family, belonging to both of us." Eric's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "People change their minds when faced with mortality, Ryan." She made her wishes clear. "When was this signed?" 3 months ago. That would have been during her second round of chemo, when the side effects had been brutal. When she was on heavy pain medication. Was she of sound mind? I asked quietly. Eric's face flushed. "Are you suggesting I took advantage of our dying mother? I'm asking if she was clear-headed when she signed this. You know how the pain meds affected her." He stood abruptly. "This conversation is over. Mom made her decision. Your military service doesn't make you special, Ryan. It doesn't entitle you to an equal share of everything just because you decided to run off and play soldier instead of staying to help with the family business." The old argument rehashed once more. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that we were both grieving. "I'd like to speak with her lawyer," I said. "Fine. His name is Peter Gladwell, though I doubt he'll tell you anything different." I stood to leave, then paused at the door. "Has anyone checked Mom's safe deposit box at First National?" Eric frowned. "What safe deposit box?" "The one she's had since Dad died. She mentioned it in one of her letters last year, said she kept important papers there." "I wasn't aware of any safe deposit box," Eric admitted, looking genuinely confused. I nodded. "Might be worth looking into." As I walked out, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Mom had always said the house would go to both of us, had even talked about me retiring there someday, converting the garden shed into a workshop for the woodworking I'd taken up during my first deployment. The will I'd just read felt like it was written by a stranger. The meeting with Peter Gladwell the next day only deepened my suspicions. "I'm sorry, who did you say you were?" the elderly attorney asked, peering at me over his glasses. "Ryan Lawson, Margaret Lawson's son." He frowned. "Margaret Lawson, the name is familiar, but I don't recall handling her will recently." A cold weight settled in my stomach. "According to my brother, you prepared and executed her will 3 months ago." Gladwell shook his head. "No, that's not possible. I've been on medical leave for the past 6 months. Hip replacement. My partner has been handling my clients." "And your partner's name is?" "David Reynolds." Not the name on the will I'd seen yesterday. I left Gladwell's office and headed straight to First National Bank. The safe deposit box was indeed registered to Margaret Lawson. As her son with proper identification and death certificate in hand, the bank allowed me access. Inside was a single manila envelope labeled "In the event of my death, Ryan and Eric." My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. The contents made my blood run cold. A properly executed will dated 8 months ago, leaving the house jointly to Eric and me. A handwritten letter from Mom explaining that she wanted her sons to share her most precious material possession, just as we share her heart. And most damning of all, a note dated 2 months ago. "Ryan, Eric has been pressuring me to change my will, to leave everything to him. He says it's because you're never here, but I think it's more than that. The cancer has spread to my brain. Some days are clearer than others. I worry that I might give in during a confused moment. If you're reading this, know that whatever will Eric might produce after my death, my true wishes are in the document included here. I've also sent a copy to Helen for safekeeping. I love you both so much. I only wish you could find your way back to being brothers again." Mom, I sat in the bank's private room for a long time. The evidence of my brother's betrayal spread before me. Anger, hurt, and grief warred within me. Part of me wanted to march back to the house and confront him immediately. Another part, the tactician trained by years of military service, knew that approach would only lead to denials and possibly the destruction of evidence. I carefully photographed each document with my phone, then returned everything to the envelope and sealed it again. I asked the bank officer to document that I had examined the contents but left them intact and not to allow anyone else access without contacting me first. Next, I visited Helen Myers. "I was wondering when you'd come," she said, ushering me into her cozy living room. "Tea. Did you know?" I asked as she handed me a steaming mug. "About what Eric was doing." Helen sighed heavily. "I suspected. Your mother confided in me about the pressure she was under. That's why she gave me this. She crossed to a bookshelf and removed a large volume of poetry, opening it to reveal a hidden compartment containing an envelope identical to the one I found in the safe deposit box. She made me promise not to say anything unless you asked, Helen explained. She didn't want to come between you boys, even at the end. He forged a will, I said quietly, used a fake attorney name and everything. Helen's eyes widened. Oh, Ryan. I knew he was pressuring her, but I never thought he'd go that far. I need your help, I said, and I need to speak with a real attorney. Helen, it turned out, had a niece who specialized in estate law. Jennifer Myers agreed to meet with me that afternoon, reviewed the documents, and confirmed what I already knew. The will Eric had presented was fraudulent, and he had committed several felonies in creating and attempting to execute it. What do you want to do? Jennifer asked after outlining my options. We could bring criminal charges, or we could handle this more discreetly. I need to think about it, I replied honestly. That night, I drove past the house, our house, and parked down the street, watching as lights glowed warmly in the windows. I thought about the childhood we shared there. Eric teaching me to ride a bike in the driveway, me helping him build a treehouse in the massive oak in the backyard, Mom making Sunday pancakes in the kitchen, Dad reading the newspaper in his favorite chair. When had it all gone so wrong? When had Eric's resentment of my chosen path calcified into this willingness to betray not just me, but our mother's dying wishes? The next morning, I called Eric. We need to talk. About Mom's safe deposit box. A pause. You found it? Yes. I think you should see what's inside. Meet me at First National at noon. He agreed, his voice carefully controlled. At the bank, I let Eric enter the private room first. The box sat on the table, already retrieved by the bank officer at my earlier request. Open it, I said. He glanced at me warily, then lifted the lid and removed the envelope. His hands were steady as he opened it, but as he read the contents, the color drained from his face. This is, he began, then faltered. Mom's real will, I finished for him, along with her explanation of why she felt she needed to hide it from you. Eric sank into a chair, the papers trembling in his hands. Ryan, I can explain. Can you? Can you explain forging our mother's signature while she was dying of cancer, creating a fake attorney, lying to me, your brother, while I was serving overseas? His eyes, so like our father's but lacking his integrity, finally met mine. You weren't here, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. You're never here. That house, it needs a family. Children, life, not some bachelor soldier who drops in every few years. That wasn't your decision to make, I said. It was Mom's, and she wanted us to share it. What are you going to do? He asked, and for the first time, I saw fear in my brother's eyes. I placed a folder on the table. These are your options prepared by my attorney. Option 1. I file charges for fraud, forgery, and attempted theft. You'll likely face jail time, disbarment from real estate, and public disgrace. He flinched. Option 2. I continued. You signed this affidavit admitting what you did but expressing remorse. You agreed to honor Mom's actual will, placing the house in both our names. You also agreed to buy out my half at a fair market value, allowing you to keep the house for your family as you wish, while compensating me properly. In return, I don't press charges. And if I refuse both options, he asked, a hint of his usual defiance returning. I leaned forward. There is no third option, Eric. Mom wanted us to find our way back to being brothers. This is me trying to honor that wish by giving you a path to redemption. But don't mistake my respect for her wishes as weakness. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, slowly, he reached for the second folder. I need time to review this with my lawyer, he said. I nodded. You have 48 hours. After that, I go to the district attorney. In the end, Eric chose option 2. The negotiation of the buyout took several weeks, during which I extended my leave to see it through. We spoke only through attorneys, the gulf between us seemingly unbridgeable. On my last day before returning to my unit, I visited the house one final time. Eric was at work, the kids at school. Melissa let me in awkwardly, then disappeared upstairs to give me privacy. I walked through each room slowly, saying goodbye. In the garden, I paused by Mom's rose bushes, remembering how she tended them even in the late stages of her illness. "I tried, Mom," I whispered. "I gave him away back. The rest is up to him." As I turned to leave, I noticed a small envelope tucked into the porch swing cushion. My name was written on it in Eric's handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a deed to a plot of land just outside town. It had belonged to our grandfather, a beautiful 5 acres with a stream running through it. Dad had always talked about building the cabin there someday. A note was attached, "For when you come home for good." It has good light for a workshop. No signature, no apology, but perhaps, in its way, a beginning. 3 years later, when my final tour ended and I returned to civilian life, I built that cabin. Simple, sturdy, with large windows and a dedicated workshop, just as I'd always imagined. Eric and his family came to the housewarming. It was awkward, strained, the weight of the past still between us. But his son, my nephew, was fascinated by my woodworking tools, and as I showed him how to safely use a hand plane, I caught Eric watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. "He has your patience," Eric said later, as we stood on the porch watching the kids explore the stream. "Mom always said you got that gift from her side of the family." She did. It was the first time in years he'd voluntarily shared a memory of our mother. He nodded, his gaze still on the children. "I'm sorry," he said finally, the words seeming to cost him great effort, not just for the will, for everything. For not understanding your choices, for resenting you when I should have been proud of you, like she was. The apology, so long in coming, felt like the release of a breath I hadn't known I was holding. "We can't go back," I said after a moment, "but maybe we can find a way forward." Eric turned to me then, and for just a moment, I glimpsed something of our father's warmth in his eyes. "I'd like that," he said quietly. "I think Mom would too." As the sun set over the trees that bordered my new home, I thought about the document that had been in Mom's safe deposit box, not just her will, but her final hope that her sons would find their way back to each other. Some inheritances, it turns out, are worth far more than property or money, and sometimes the path to healing begins with a simple, unexpected truth.